Hello, Hoovians, and welcome back to the third channel. Oh, I know. Look at it. It's weird. I do too many interviews. I know. It's amazing. I'm more surprised than you. You're just watching, going, "Oh yeah, he's a genius." Yeah. Well, you probably won't say he's a genius. If narcissism, I am the genius. But I'm more surprised than you because you're just the viewers. I'm the one doing this, so I don't expect whatever happens to happen. So this is another wonderful interview. Now, in the previous interview, I mentioned there might be rain noises, and there wasn't because it was heavily raining. Well, I'm going to say that again, but this time it's wind. It might be because it was very windy. When I'm trying to open the door, I'm like, "Ugh," and the door's trying to hit me in the face, and I'm just trying to shut it. What's the wind like? I don't know. It depends on where you live. But we shall crack on. My guest today is best known for comedy and all things ha ha funny. It's one and only Tom Crowley.
Hiya, hiya! Now, that was a special hello because to peek behind the curtain, Tom, our host, another Tom, told me that there's a compilation of hellos at the end of each year. And that is a moment that from, I think it's Dev from EastEnders, who's one of the most singular actors working today. And I don't really watch EastEnders, but I saw a clip on a Harry Hill program once, just sort of showcasing his unique talents. And one really well judged moment was that he answered a call during the show and he answered it, hiya, hiya, instead of, like a human might say like hello or hi or something like that, or even hiya.
Yeah.
But no, hiya, hiya. So if you want to include that in the compilation reel, I'd be very, very happy indeed. Thank you.
Yeah, I think one of the weirdest ones I've had is stood on a beach. Tim Trelaw, who is just an amazing man, just
Oh
shouts,
yeah, Tim Troy, brilliant, yeah.
just shouts the word "Shemai" at the camera whilst we're on a beach, whilst we're trying to stop people from walking onto the rocky beach.
Yeah.
And it's the weirdest thing that's ever happened because I organised it to happen, and it's still amazing that it happened.
It still
But,
came off.
yeah. And so we'll start at the very beginning because
Mm.
Julie Andrews used to say when she could sing, but I've never heard a confirmation that she can still sing. It's just rumours that I've heard that she's got an illness that means she can't sing. That's why she doesn't do much singing. But she always says start at the very beginning because it's a good place to start.
It is a good place.
And not yet have I disagreed with her, but she'll probably get some assassins on me if I did. Well, how did you get into the world we call comedy?
Well, firstly, I'd say I would disagree with Julie Andrews about some of her favourite things. I think some of them are great. I love brown paper packages tied up with string. I mean, that's quite good, but it's a strange thing to put in your most favourite things. I don't know. Maybe it's before we had shop bought wallpaper, wrapping paper that was very spangly. So a brown paper package tied up with string was. Maybe that was the most exotic thing you could hope for back then. I don't know, but I hot and cold on Andrews' opinions. But yeah, so starting in comedy, this is a very. It's interesting you asked, Tom, because I think this is a very particular story. I feel very fortunate about it as well, but also it's a story of a different era to where we are now, unfortunately. I was messing about just in my spare time as a kid, as a teenager, making sketches with my friends from school, Toby Wilson and Jack Bernhardt, professional contacts for many years and best friends still. And we just wrote some sketches. I was doing then back what I'm doing again now. I've regressed because now what I do is record all the voices myself in my home and edit them together. So I basically haven't moved on since I was about 15 years old. But anyway, so that's what we were doing. It's just a bit of fun and kind of privately nursing dreams of working professionally. But really, we were just thinking, oh, we think this is quite funny. We make each other laugh. Let's just try to see if we can. What can we make out of this? Can we actually make programs? And we could make little sketches and things in audio using Audacity, which I've upgraded from that at least. But still, it's still around. It's still around as a program. God bless them. Anyway, so we were doing this, and so we came up with a few ideas. We were like, before podcasts really even existed, we thought let's do a podcast because I think the idea that a podcast was an audio show released online. I think that existed.
Yeah.
Even if the sort of landscape of modern podcasts, even if that didn't exist, we were like, okay, internet radio sounds good. Sounds cheap because, a few sound effects and you don't need any more budget than that, really. So we made these very tinnily recorded Probably fairly decent considering that this is what we were working with. But anyway, we made these little sketches and edited them together, and we made, I think it was 3 half-hour little podcasty episodes. God knows where they are now. But so we then saw that there was a BBC competition called Witty and Twisted, run by the wonderful Victoria Lloyd, still producer, still working today. And I say still working today like this was 50 years ago. This was in the early 21st century. But still, Victoria Lloyd still at the forefront of her game, a fantastic audio producer in comedy. And she was just looking for new talent. So we entered. We were amazed that we made it sort of through any of the stages.
Yeah.
And we ended up being invited to some workshops in BBC Comedy, as was then, and being asked to write a script to sort of submit as a final entry with the help of these workshops, rewrite your entry, send it in. And in the end, we didn't win it. But because this was the past, this was in 2007, just before the 2008 financial crash, not winning the competition didn't mean that you didn't get to make a program. There was a losers showcase, as we humorously called it, called Play and Record, which had 2 series, and the second series was a bit different. But the first one was a bunch of up-and-coming brilliant voice people and radio comedy people. Alyssa Kyria, I believe, who's still doing comedy as well now today. She was one of the voices on it, and we and a bunch of the other competition winners were as well. I think Margaret Caborn-Smith was another lady who was involved in that, and she's brilliant and at the forefront of radio comedy these days still. But yeah. Anyway, so we did this loser showcase show, and off the back of that, our producer Victoria Still said, I'd like to try and get you guys your own Radio 7, now known as Radio 4 Extra, show. Because back then, stuff that was it was like the BBC Three of radio, basically. Now it's all reruns. But back then, if it was something that wasn't quite ready for, analog broadcast, just digital, they tried it out there first. So that's what we got to do. We got to do, in the end, it was 2 half-hours rather than 4 15 minutes for scheduling reasons.
Yeah.
And so we got to just play in this little playpen and record it in Broadcasting House. It was an insanely brilliant opportunity. God knows how much I got paid then, probably way below what should be the minimum. But we were young, we didn't know, we didn't mind. But yeah, we got paid to write and perform a radio comedy show on the BBC. I mean, twice. Once as part of a bigger group, and once just ourselves. Our four. Oh, sorry, I never said the group was called at that time Four Sad Faces because there were four of us. And yeah, so we got to do that, and that was, it was an education in many ways, partly because we were working with professional producers, script editors, all of that, and we had to put it in front of an audience. We couldn't just hide away and go, yeah, we made this, leave us alone. We had to do it in front of people and face up to what we'd done. But also an education in that we learned, if you enter the right competition or email the right person or, and work hard and try your best to sling your work out there as much as possible, you can get paid to do this. It's not just for very few people who went to Oxford or Cambridge and were the most promising people in the footlights or whatever. Anyone can get out there and do it and make contact. And the reason I say it was different then is that these days, if you enter a sort of new talent search for the BBC or radio comedy and you win it, you still probably don't get a show on the radio. But back then, what is it, nearly 20 years ago now? God, that's frightening. 17, 18 years ago, whatever it was, it was still possible. And there still are opportunities like that out there to get produced.
Yeah.
Sorry, it's such a long story, but I feel like there's so much to say about the business and about my career so far in just this beginning, which was the beneficence and good fortune that we got to meet Victoria Lloyd and that she was interested in what we did and believed it might be good. So anyway, we got to do that, and that's how I started in comedy.
And you mentioned Audacity there, and it still is widely used. Even though I use better softwares, I do what Audacity does really well is it's a cheaper way of making a dialect noise without needing the whole shebang machine that you can technically no longer buy, but Nick Briggs still keeps of having them. And
yeah, I've done a dialect voice, and I've used a Ring modulator plugin on Reaper, the audio editing software. So if you want to move on to Audacity, that's my tip for you. Use a Ring mod.
And the other thing you mentioned there about how you now just create all the voices yourself, and I think that that's an art form in itself, because for sheer simpleness, I created a radio program for my university that was called Nonsense, where it was improvised. I used to write down the topic titles, so I knew what I was going to say. But then I just did whatever I wanted. And at one point, I pretended there was a small child that hijacked a plane, but just went wee wee wee. So I'm sat at like 6 in the morning in this room in front of a microphone going wee wee wee,
Yeah.
pretending that I'm a small child, and then next minute saying the lyrics to "Sunshine on Leaf,"
Yeah.
spoken word, because I was pretending I was a band that can't really sing, that can only say the words.
Yeah.
It was very
They sound
questionable.
great, I've got to say.
It
I
was
love
very,
the sound of these
it was
sketches.
very questionable, but they didn't care. Well, I'd say they didn't care. They played it because they cared. They put the effort in, but they
Mm.
just didn't check to make sure that it wasn't anything absurd. And so I
They
just,
let it go through, they waved it through.
yeah. Yeah, and I think that it's incredible that comedy is just available for anyone. And do you reckon that that's why there's so much comedy, because you're not gatekeep, because there's so many different varieties of the comedy and then new element of comedy coming in.
I think it's an interesting question. I think the big answer to that is yeah, because there is less of a gatekeeping kind of barrier to entry. I say that, but I mean, I think there's always people you never think of, right? I mean, so you might go, all you need is a smartphone with a camera, and you can access the internet. And you go, well, still are some people who struggle to get hold of a decent quality smartphone. There are still barriers to entry, and I think it's important to remember that what we think might just be very everyday access doesn't apply to absolutely everybody, but beyond that, there are so far fewer barriers to access that you can just have a YouTube channel and suddenly you've got a video sketch show. You
Yeah,
can just get a microphone of reasonable quality, and then you've got the opportunity. And you can use free software still. You can still use. I mean, Reaper has a free trial mode even, and that's professional standard software. You can use Audacity forever for free, and then you might have the opportunity to get yourself a comedy podcast. And I think that, yeah, I think that that's it's certainly a way that people start out. But
yeah,
that said, I think about this so much because obviously I'm involved in sketch comedy still. Even my old sketch buddies have moved on from sketch comedy. I mean, Jack does all kinds of TV and radio comedy writing. Toby writes mostly in animation, and I'm the one still flying the flag for sketch because I love it as a medium so
yeah,
much. And but I think the thing is, so people go sketch comedy, great, good for you doing sketch comedy. But you stay in your box over there because sketch comedy is now not something we really do on telly. Although we'll talk about this, but that has changed in the last week. But they go, oh, sketch comedy, that's great, isn't it? Sketch because we here at I'm Mr. Big Telly, and I, Mr. Big Telly, no longer have to put money into that because you lot all do it yourself, don't you? On TikTok and YouTube and Twitter and things and Instagram, you do it yourselves in your own time, so I don't have to pay you to do it anymore. Great, brilliant. And if someone's got 20 million views, we'll maybe give them something to do on telly. But till then, you just carry on doing what you're doing. And my contention is that all the sketch stuff that I grew up loving,
yeah,
and lots of the sort of broken comedy shows, broken format, modular format comedy shows that I loved, like Look Around You as well, and things like The League of Gentlemen, which is sort of half sketch. That my point is that you can't do the same things that those people did on a zero budget smartphone filmed sketch. Some people are very, very imaginative in the field of YouTube. Some people make a lot of decent money and then they up their production values colossally to almost like a telly production value standard.
yeah,
But, I grew up loving things like Big Train and Goodness Gracious Me. I've just been rewatching all of Goodness Gracious Me and I absolutely love it. And what they're doing there is they're creating a little home, a little half-hour home and a world which is really accessible. It was, it goes out on telly into your home, and then once the iPlayer arrives, it's there, ready to be streamed. And now these days, with sketch shows like I Think You Should Leave and things like that, and even things like Famalam over here in the UK, those things are sponsored, they're supported, they
yeah,
look nice, they've got a budget, they're filmed by professionals, they give people professional acting credits, professional writing credits. The people behind the camera get work to do, and they get to not just make one, police drama with one color grade, one style of filmmaking. A camera crew gets to parody an action film, do a domestic drama, they get to do an animated segment maybe, they get to do all these different things. And I think that it's simply not adequate to go, oh, well, people can just do it themselves at home. That's where sketch lives now. I've heard that phrase before. Sketch comedy lives online. And I think, well, yes, a certain style does, but, you're still not giving people that access and that opportunity. And the end product is always going to be, it's never going to be that same thing that I grew up loving so much. I think a lot of people still do love.
yeah.
Let me just get off my soapbox now. There we go. All right, finished.
And why do you reckon that? So, because of the fact that, and briefly explain that my knowledge is so vast. I know the obscure things that I'm about to mention that help. So why do you reckon that the UK? It's like when I say the UK, I mean England itself. Why do you reckon that England doesn't make as much comedy? Because I know that BBC Scotland recently, as of I think it's like last year, this year, released a new sketch show, and I know that BBC Alaba or Oliver made a sketch show that was hilarious because they had Donald Trump, his brother is they're both Scottish, really, and
Right.
Donald Trump speaks Gaelic, and so he's always phoning his brother who lives in Scotland, and then they did a deaf sketch show called Deaf Funny that
Yes.
Rufus Green and Gemma Harris missed in.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And why do you reckon that the UK itself doesn't make as much sketch shows as other places like Scotland and Gaelic
Well,
people?
there are a few around the sort of the regions of the UK, yeah, and I think that one reason that they tend to get made in places like that is a lot of these places, a lot of more specific regional broadcasters, whether it is in Wales or Scotland or Northern Ireland or wherever. I think that the benefit of sketch comedy is if you are under pressure,
Yeah,
as a lot of these kind of franchises of the BBC are, to employ a certain number of people and create a certain amount of new content.
yeah,
I hate that word. I'm sorry, I swore as well. I said the word content and it made me swear. Material, art. Let's say art. You're under pressure to create a certain amount of new stuff with a certain amount of new talent. Then sketch comedy is incredibly helpful.
yeah,
Because if you need to employ, if to justify your department's budget, you need to employ five brand new writers who've never had a credit before, give each of them one sketch in a 15-minute program, and hooray, you've done it. And I think there's a lot of that going on. Plus, not just for cynical reasons. I think in terms of talent development and access,
yeah,
sketch is incredibly helpful for that same reason. Because I hate to make value judgments, but I suppose I would say no, I was going to say that writing a sketch is easier than writing a short film, but I'm going to take that back, actually. I think it's just that I'm much more experienced in the structure and style of writing sketch than short film. But either way, both of them are very helpful. But actually, if anything, sketches tend to be even shorter.
yeah,
So it's like 2 or 3 minutes versus 12 minutes. So if you want to give someone a chance to write something that has a set of established parameters and rules, it's clear, like it should start with clear establishment of where you are. It should end with a punchline. In the middle, it's whatever you want it to be. And that's a sketch. So you can sort of teach anyone that that's what they should be writing, and you can teach them how to do it. So then if you've got that 3-minute script from this new person, then you can film it and you can give them notes and make the script as good as it can be, cast actors, go through the whole process of making sure that it's acted as well as it can be, shot as well as it can be, edited as well as it can be. And then you've done some development, some talent development. And again, I think in areas where the pressure is on, and there is a genuine urge to develop new talent, I think that's why those shows are made more and that they still exist. And so much talent in those areas, the UK, comes from those early sketch development type things. And people who go on to have their own sitcoms start out writing a little short thing for those, and and it's incredibly encouraging to see. But I suppose what I'm saying is implicitly there is that maybe the sort of centrifugal BBC force,
yeah,
and broadcasting force of London is a place where they're not interested in developing new talent, and that's why there's less sketch comedy. Or I think they believe that they have alternate routes for developing that new talent, but it's still very prescriptive. I think it's very gatekeepery, and I think something that was a little more accessible, like a sketch show, or at least a sketch show. Well, if you don't mind me like banging on about this a bit longer, then we can talk about the new Mitchell and Webb announcement, which I'm sure you've heard about.
yeah, yeah. And it is interesting because I've read it the first time thinking, oh, the back on Radio 4, and then reread it, I've got, oh, it's Channel 4.
Mm.
That makes
Yes.
more sense. And I think that Channel 4, because they've now got Taskmaster, I think that what they've done is they've found new talent within that. Obviously, because Taskmaster is you've got your comedians that people know very well. You've got your ones that they think they know very well, but they're slightly on the verge of knowing. Then they've got the ones that only a small selection of your audience might know who
Yeah.
that person is, and this is their breakout role,
Mm.
because they're technically performing. Well, they are performing, and I think that what Channel 4 does really well because they're giving them the comedy blacks, really help them. And do you reckon that David Mitchell and Robert Webb bringing us sketch show on TV? Do you reckon that will help bring back more people having more sketch shows here in here in the England part of the UK.
Yeah, in the sort of the centralized urban center
Yeah,
of the UK. Yeah, quite. I think yeah, yes and no. I think that the trouble is with telly, especially at the moment, because there's not a lot of money flying about, and I think everyone's sort of in crisis. Everyone's trying to make productions that are very expensive, but they're also having no money. So that you can see there's a problem there. Like, we want to make a new drama that costs £20 million. How much have we got in the kitty? £41.50. Okay, well that might be an issue. That's where we are currently. Is people panicking a bit, going, "Oh, there's not enough money." And so, in a way, that's the perfect time to bring back more sketch stuff because, again, as we've said, it's sort of the budget constraints are sort of limited because you're only making these little things. People always say sketch is expensive, but I think if you use a bit of ingenuity to, double up locations and cheat things and do cheapo effects tricks and things like that, it can be affordable, and lots of sketch shows have been. But anyway, point being, that kind of like non-prestige, non-giant budget project is exactly the kind of thing that could thrive at a time like this, but people have to be brave enough to try it. And that's the trouble is quite often a lack of funding or a panic in terms of people's job security, panic in terms of what's the role of telly now in the in the face of streamers and stuff like that. What's the place of the UK? We've had all these American co-productions, and now that money's drying up. They're going away. They're leaving us in the dirt as well. So what do we do now? What do we do now? And I think the trouble is quite often that leads to a lot of clamming up and a lot of not taking any risk and just going, I'll just keep my head down and I won't make any programs except for the very safe ones, and no one will fire me. And so the trouble is, it would be nice to have a little bit more, give some promising person 10 grand and say, make a TV show. I think we'd get some great results. Like some of the amazing talent you see coming up on social media and YouTube and stuff, I think gave them some money, and then you'd be like, wow, I mean, you might get the worst show ever, but it'd be interesting.
yeah,
Anyway, so I think that the trouble there is they've gone for a sketch show, and I think a lot of people have been quite scathing about the fact that it's Mitchell and Webb and going, oh yeah, great, new talent being given an opportunity. But, there are the people that are flanking them. Some of them are people I've not heard of.
yeah,
Like people like I have heard of, obviously, Carl Smith Bino and Stevie Martin, but they're people, as you just said, who are kind of the less familiar faces on Taskmaster,
yeah,
that thanks to shows like Taskmaster and Ghosts and things are now way more a presence in people's minds and in their homes. And I think that giving them a chance to be, multiple sketch characters in this show is great. I'd like to hear more about what kinds of writers they've got,
yeah,
because especially if they're trying out the first sketch show that's been on in a while, and they've got big stars, leading it, I suspect it'll be some more established writers as well. And again, that's fine as long as you also throw a bone to people that are kind of just getting started, and they're either doing characters, sketch, stand up in clubs and stuff, or they're trying, putting videos on Instagram and of their act, or whatever. Maybe they're the sorts of people who want to start doing festivals right now. They're the sorts of people to whom one sketch credit on Channel 4 would mean the world. It would transform their careers. And that's the sort of thing I'd like to see more of. Now, it's possible that if this goes down well and people go, oh yeah, that's right, people love sketch comedy, then we will get some more. And maybe some of those will be a bit more risky and have a few more new people involved. However, if it's anything less than a giant hit, they might go, yeah, see, sketch comedy doesn't work. I told you we shouldn't have made this. Never mind. We won't do it again.
yeah.
And I think that's the danger, is that you put all your bet on all your eggs in the one basket. And if that basket falls apart and the beautiful eggs smash on the floor, then people go, well, we won't do that again. This whole egg basket concept, we're going to abandon that now.
And I think that because Stevie Martin is brilliant because
Mm.
not only can she write it's comedy, but she can also write for Kyle Smith Bino as a presenter on Sewing Bee. Because
Oh, right. You work on that.
so she wrote all his material because
Oh, really? I didn't even know that.
he kept putting FaceTime stuff online where he said, "Right, I want a joke about why Esme's so small and why she looks like that woman out The Incredibles." And he would then come up with
She
this.
does. She does it like that.
Yeah, she does. And then come up with this incredible joke, and it'll really work. And then he'll obviously he's not doing the next series because Sarah Pascal's back because she went on maternity leave. But then it's like
Oh, I see. So that was the swap out. Ah, okay. I've not
yeah,
kept up with that.
then he went on to Joel Ice's program, and then Joel Ice forgot to mention that Sarah Pascal hosted it before him.
God, the wheels within wheels in this business, aren't
And
there?
one of the things you mentioned there is that you said that sketches were easier to write than a short film. And I think that
Mm,
what's really hard about writing a sketch is that if you've got Donald Trump that's supposed to be Scottish and
hmm.
Gaelic, it's hard to make it explain why he's sat in the White House talking to his brother that's probably in like the Isle of Lewis or something speaking Gaelic back at him. It's just a hard thing to produce because you have to think what is the logistics of this? How is this possible? How is it
Mm,
possible that Donald Trump pretending to be American was really just someone that lived on an island in Scotland that knew a lot
yeah.
of Gaelic? But the rest of the program was quite weird. It was like mini fairies dancing, and it was an
Right.
odd program,
Sounds
but
pretty weird, yeah.
it was weird. But it was just amazing because I know that Rod Gilbert's wife had made a sketch show for S4C. I
Uh-huh.
can't find, and I can't find a clip to work on what it was ever called. But she made a Christmas sketch show for S4C, so I know
Oh.
that
Rod
that
Gilbert, that was. So I know this is terrible bad form on a Zoom call, but I need to look this up now.
yeah. Well, I've
Uh,
been trying to look for it for the past like 3 years. Um, it,
right, okay.
it's Rod Gilbert's wife. I
Oh,
think
Shan Harris. Yeah, of course I know Shan Harris. Yeah, yeah, of course she is. Yes, I forgot about that. Yeah, I'm so sorry, Shan, if you ever see this. I totally forgot that that was the
so.
connection you had. Yeah, no, she's brilliant, and she's also someone who's been in sketch for years and years. Like since I was doing the Fringe, she
Yeah,
was around with a group called Super Clump, and also doing her own things elsewhere. And it's brilliant, brilliant sketch writer performer. And it doesn't surprise me at all that she'd end up doing a sketch thing on
yeah.
telly.
And one of the things you've worked on
Yes.
is if you only hear the title, you'll get confused and think it's something completely different. As did I when I first heard of it. I thought it was generally a really high end documentary series, but it was actually a drama that was semi relevant to what I thought it was, but it was still incredible and
Oh,
really
I've guessed what it is now.
only like
Yeah.
appearing on the Royals.
Mm. Do you know, I was so sure you were about to say the Beef and Dairy Network podcast because everyone thinks that's genuinely about farming. Anyway, sorry, yes. Yeah, the Royals. Yeah, that was such a weird show and such a strange booking. You know, I mean, I don't think it's hard to spot if you look at my IMDb. It's the most sort of lengthy, sustained TV job I've had, yeah, really. On television, anyway, I've had maybe more lengthy and more sustained work in audio and radio and stuff. But, you know, for it was an American funded kind of soap opera style drama
Yeah,
about a fictional British royal family led by Elizabeth Hurley as the Queen and Joan Collins as the Queen Mother. So right away, that gives you a clue as to what we're talking about. It was like, if people remember, like Dynasty or Dallas. It was like that, but about a made-up British royal family. God knows if they were meant to be inspired by the Windsors or
yeah.
not. I don't know, but it's people often think that as well. They go, "Oh, you were in the Royals. Oh, I love that. The funny one with Harry Enfield." I go, "No, no, no. That was it makes more. It would make more sense if I was in that, but I'm not. I'm in the glossy American drama." It was so strange, and it was just from a casting. You know, like any other actor, I've got an agent puts me up for parts, and this is just one of those. And I was auditioned to play like a journalist, like just a reporter shouting from the sidelines. And then they said, "Oh, can we try you out for this?" And God knows, I mean, it's not very flattering. Why? Because the part I ended up playing was quite a sort of a creepy computer hacker, government leaker type. So they must have seen me and gone like, "Creepy guy, perfect." I don't know, but they thought, oh, for some reason they thought I'd have a crack at this, and I just went in for one reading. I was in there for all of about 1 minute, like 60 seconds in the audition room, and then the next thing I know, they went, "Yeah, you've got it. You've got to film for 5 weeks in East London." And I went, "Okay." I had to cancel a trip to Edinburgh with my family. I had to fly home early to do my costume fitting. But you know, it's like, oh my God, oh, I'm making it. I'm really making it. It's going to be in a TV show, and it's very strange. I mean, you can see it. I don't know if it's on Prime or Netflix now. It's out there on a streamer or
My
other
five,
somewhere.
my
On
five,
which?
my
Oh,
five.
Channel 5 now, is it? Okay.
Yeah, so it's available in full on my five, and
Yeah.
it is worth watching because it's both weird because of the casting, and it's
Yeah.
also amazing because you get confused very quickly of what on earth you're watching, and
Yeah,
that's
yeah. I mean, it's nuts. I mean, I remember. So my my wife came with me to the rap party for it, and it was such a funny experience because obviously, like I'd seen some episodes of it as research.
yeah,
My wife hadn't seen any of it yet, and I told her about filming it, and like, yeah, Jake Maskell, he's brilliant. He plays the sort of pretender to the throne, the brother of Elizabeth Hurley's character. So she knew some basic details. And he's lovely as well. I did most of my film scenes with him and Will Mosley, both brilliant, lovely people, great actors. And so yeah, so that was that was all she knew about it. And we went to this rap party in a fancy bar in Old Street, really posho. You know, this felt like, oh, this is your proper telly
Yeah.
rap party. And in the basement of that, there was a dance floor, and they were going to screen a little highlights reel of Series 4. Here's what we've done. Here's some stuff we've edited already. And the speakers had gone funny. So anyone with a sort of bassy voice, it just went. And so that they go, oh, I guess we can't seem to fix it. We'll just play it as it is. So there would be like, glossy shot of London, and then someone comes on screen who's, very fake tanned and made up and looks swarthy into the camera and goes, no idea what's going on, what they're talking about. Then a shot of Elizabeth Hurley falling into a chocolate fountain and coming out drenched in like brown goo. And then someone goes, ah. And, various like shots of Glastonbury Festival with some of the characters walking around. Shots of people firing guns or like walking into a room and confronting people about stuff, and like all the lights in London switching off. And my wife, yeah, no dialogue clues because it was all. And my wife just turns to me and goes, "What the hell is this show?" Because there was no way. What? So hang on, what is it? It's a drama about the royal family, is it? And it's nuts. But it meant there was some fun, crazy stuff. I was playing this hacker guy, and we're sat in a van, and we're trying to me and the actual Queen are trying to rob a rich guy's house because he's got some secret information on a USB stick or something, and things like that. So I get to do that like Jason Bourne spy briefing type thing, but it's to the Queen in a van, and it's just so mad. And anyway, it's good fun. It's great fun, and a proper nice high profile job to get to do. So God bless them, and God bless the casting directors. But it was very odd, very short experience.
So it's like if the Queen really was part of MI5 after she threw out the helicopter out the.
That's right. Yeah, parachuted out. Yeah, with James Bond. Quite. Yeah, indeed. It was that sort of thing. I don't think she ever did a sort of para drop. It's that's the sort of thing they could have done. I'd have liked it if they'd gone more in that direction actually, and had fight scenes with Liz Hurley, kung fu kicking people or something like in Austin Powers. I think that would be really good.
Yeah. And I think that one of the things that really is bizarre, but I think when you really think about it, when you really think about the details, it makes it more impressive, because even though it's quite bizarre, so when you watch it, at certain scenes, and this is an odd comparison to make, but it always reminds me of a sketch from, I'm going to mispronounce it because it's a combination of other words. Four Arms and Hog.
Oh, Foil Arms and Hog. Yeah.
It reminds me of one of their sketches because of the way it's filmed. I just think, wow, they're impressive because it looks like a TV program, and it is just like a really odd concept for a program. It's like if the Windsors wanted to pretend to be serious, but at the same time wanted to capture the Channel 5 audience in the UK. They love watching programs like roller coasters when go horribly wrong, and some celebrity that you've never really heard of going, yeah, and it blew up and it was really scary. It must have been really angry, and all
it'd be so funny to do a comedy show that was one of those, but with Elizabeth Hurley in it. Yeah, well, I was on the roller coaster and I saw the car in front of me fly off the tracks, and I thought, gosh, what's going on? Yeah, that'd be brilliant. Well, I'll pitch that now. That's yoink.
Yeah, and I think that briefly before we move on, I think that Channel 5 do they sometimes do really good programs like Susan Calman on a cruise somewhere, because it's Calman and having Jane McDonald just everywhere is sort of a good thing.
She's everywhere. She gets around, yeah.
And I think that what Channel 5 does the best, due to the fact that you watch them not because you want to, just out of pure curiosity. Why? It's 2 hours, but it's like Britain. It's like when live TV goes horribly wrong or whatever.
Yeah.
But the best one is when you watch back to back. Britain's favourite whatever, crisps, chocolate, whatever.
Yeah.
Because it's the same stock footage at the same moment, and it's the same people. But for the chocolate one, they've got like Hackerty dog that doesn't eat chocolate.
Well, he's a puppet. Yeah, and he's a dog. He shouldn't eat chocolate. Doubly shouldn't eat chocolate.
Yeah. And then you've got the human. You've got Kathleen, who I can't. Katie. What? Katie something, I can't think of her real name, but Hacker calls her Kathleen, and Shay's been called Kathleen. And so she's there eating the chocolate, and Phil, who plays Hacker, is on the floor going, I'm pretending to eat this chocolate, and I don't know if it's any nice, and I can't give my own opinion. And then they did it with crisps. So he's there looking at these crisps, and Britain's favourite takeaway, Hacker wants the Chinese takeaway. Like,
Yeah.
what? Why does that exist? But I
Oh
think that
man.
that could be a sketch show where you get these
Oh yeah.
series programs like Britain's favourite chocolate bars, and but all the people that are talking about it are different animals that are puppets that if they eat them they would die in the real life.
Emu would come on and
Yeah, yeah,
attack some chow mein, and
yeah. Or
Rontal
fall
goes,
like a
yeah,
pea.
lovely.
And one of the other things you've worked on
Yeah.
that it's I recently heard that it's been going on for so long, you're surprised that it's still going on because of the selection of other things that said person could be doing because they are amazing. And I think this program is amazing, but I think that there's like he did a pilot for a TV program that was incredible but never got picked up.
Mm.
What they're like working on? Thanks a lot, Milton Jones.
Oh, lovely. I was wondering where we were going with this. Yeah. No, Milton Jones is brilliant. And he's someone he's such a veteran of stand-up and of radio comedy as well. I wasn't aware of his TV pilot. I need to look that up. But he's someone who I think is just so beloved for what he does. And maybe if you spoke to him, he'd feel differently. But I always feel like because that was through a brilliant radio producer called David Tyler,
Yeah,
who's been over the years has been a radio and telly producer. He produced my favorite TV sitcom of all time, Dinner Ladies, and yeah, so it's all I'm always a bit in awe of working with him. But he's been a big booster of me for years. God bless him for it as well. Really, really kind of him. And this was just another job where they needed another guy who could do multiple voices, and they called me in for that, and I was over the moon. But I remember seeing Milton Jones do a radio recording. What
yeah.
was the one called before?
Is it
Uh,
is it House? I've got a feeling it's called House.
House. Hang on, no, there's a radio
And it's a really
Milton.
catchy theme tune. And it's the Milton Jones. Is it that one?
I don't know if that's the one. Hang on.
All right,
Wait, 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 wait,
that's
wait,
one
wait,
that's
wait,
got a
wait.
catchy theme tune that Olivia Colman's in.
The Very World of Milton Jones is
Ah,
the one that I'm thinking of. House. Oh no, yeah, Olivia Colman. I think she was
yeah,
in it.
yeah, she was in it. And then they did a
The
TV.
House, yeah, you're right. The House of Milton Jones. That was after. See, because the one I'm thinking of is The Very World,
Yeah,
and I was taken to see that by a family friend as a child because they knew I was interested in comedy, and I said this that I looked it up when I was getting ready to film. I mean, I saw this, and it was an early version of the same sort of thing. Milton Jones does a sitcom plus loads of really like dense pun jokes,
yeah.
and I said to David Tyler, "Oh, you produced that as well." Because he's been in the business so long, it's like you produced the one I saw when I was little. Like I was about, what, 10 or 11 years old. And he said, "Yeah, well, if you were at that recording as you claim, then I was producing that, and you probably saw me do the exact same producer introduction I'm going to do tonight at the news show. Same jokes,
Yeah.
30 years later." But it was that was such a strange experience. But no, I've always thought he was just brilliant. Just one of those people who's dependably amazing. And sadly, they are sometimes the people that get overlooked. And as you say, like he should be on, like getting way more of his own work on telly. But he's done lots of stuff here and there. But like he should have more of a platform. They give him his own thing.
Yeah.
I mean, for example, Thanks a Lot, Milton Jones is the sort of thing you could easily adapt as a fun mainstreamy sitcom for telly, and they should,
Yeah.
and they should put me in it. But no, it's great. And he's Milton Jones is such a gentlemanly, quiet, docile, kind person, obviously. And I was there. It was me, Tom Goodman Hill, and Josie Lawrence. So it's already like two
Hey,
icons, two heroes that I'm getting to work with. Plus Milton Jones, who's just sat there very quietly, just thinking about the jokes.
and
And we
Spike.
do the read through, and he's animated and energetic. And then, afterwards, I'm chatting to Tom Goodman Hill and Josie Lawrence, and yammering on about life and the business and everything. And he's just there very quietly, sort of just taking it all in. And he's just such a clever, thoughtful man. But he's not in any way flashy or showy. It was really lovely. I can't speak highly enough of that experience. It was great.
And I think that the pilot that I'm on about, and I think it's very similar to the House of Milton Jones. It's very similar in the sense of it's Milton Jones, and it was on Channel 4. It was a comedy blap, and it was one of those. It's like that must have been so expensive to make
Mm.
why not make more due to the fact that
Yeah, you've already invested this much in it.
yeah,
Yeah,
and it's
quite.
one of those things. It's like it's a program where you walk in, so it's a house, and you walk in, and each door something stupid is going to happen behind that door. But
Oh
in
wow.
essence, there's always one door that is his mother. So it's practically the radio show that's got the world's most catchy theme tune on radio ever.
I've got to look that up. Yeah.
And I've got it on a button down below, so I can just press it, and it comes in a compilation, and it plays in, and it's incredible. But
It
the
should be the theme song to this interview. You should play it as the.
yeah,
You might get a copyright strike off YouTube, but apart from that,
I probably would because and it probably wouldn't make much sense because it's all about Milton Jones being an idiot, and then he lives in his house, and Olivia Colman lives with him,
but
which
I'm an idiot and I live in a house, so
I
actually I
would
live
have
in a
lived with
flat.
Olivia Colman.
She's not here, sadly.
Funnily enough, just before we move on, funnily enough,
Mm,
there's someone in the world of Doctor who
mm,
has presented stuff for the DVD extras, does a
hmm.
lot of writing and whatnot, and she lives with, and she's appeared in two different documentaries that isn't about her, but she lives with Miriam Margolyes.
Oh right.
So Miriam Margolyes needed someone to live with her because the house was too big on her own, and so she lived with Miriam Margolyes, and she appeared on Off Menu, chucking a sandwich to Miriam Margolyes, and and then she appeared as an elbow on a Miriam Margolyes Imagine documentary.
Oh.
And so she lives with Miriam Margolyes, who played Beat the Meat in a recent.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, yeah. Well, great job as to beat the meep, I thought.
yeah,
Really brilliant. Yeah.
but what's weird about it is that she then goes off and filmed all these things. But you have to think about it. She lives with Miriam Margolyes, and she is writing for Doctor Who magazine. She's filming stuff with like really high-powered Doctor Who people.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, she comes home to Miriam Margolyes, and
To one
it's
of the greatest British comedy actors of all
yeah,
time. Yeah,
yeah,
it's
it,
strange.
it's
Very
just
odd.
incredible. So if someone has an odd story where they live with Olivia Colman, but they're really a coal
Never
miner,
lived with Olivia Colman or Miriam Margolyes. No, sadly.
uh, uh,
What's the oddest? I suppose meeting. There's two incredibly famous kind of glamorous Hollywood figures that I've met. I was joking that I'm kind of trying to develop a career where I perform at least one line or one, interaction with all of the sort of archetypal 90s babes. So I've been in, done a couple of scenes with Elizabeth Hurley as one. And then recently I was in a Netflix film called Back in Action. It's just the back of my head, but it's just one
yeah,
little moment
yeah,
with Cameron Diaz. So
yeah.
there's two. Like, if anyone wants to submit me a list of others I have to try and work with,
Oh,
then feel free. But that said, though, both of them incredibly nice people, so that's good. They have to also be really nice people. So if you've got a list of them, sort of 90s fashion icons and like glamorous TV personalities, movie stars, whatever, send me a list of them, and I'll try and make sure I've worked with all of them by the end of my life.
and we briefly mentioned it earlier, but one of the
Yeah.
things we worked on that is, I've had an argument with whether or not it's improvised because then you can tell it's well, you can't really tell it's a script, but because you can because once you've locked into the comedy world and you know too much than you should for your age,
Mm. Oh yeah,
you
me too.
know
Yeah, it's me. Yeah.
you know the sort of work it goes into it,
Mm.
and it's incredible. But my only issue with it is that when he does his other podcasts, you can't tell who's who. But what's it like working on one of the greatest podcasts that is champion the more you don't just sit there in front of a microphone and witter. What's it like working on the Beef and Network Dairy podcast?
The Beef and Dairy Network podcast. Yeah, it's interesting you say about the three bean salad not being able to tell. That was the other podcast you mentioned, I'm assuming.
Yeah, yeah.
Because I can really tell them apart on that. I don't know if it's just because I'm so entrenched in just like Southern English Londoniness, and so I can tell the accents apart more easily. But everyone says that, especially Americans. Americans
Yeah,
can't tell Ben, Henry, and Mike apart at all. But I think it's also because I know them all, so
yeah.
I always know who it is,
Yeah.
definitely. But anyway, yes, I hear what you're saying. It's a frequently held complaint. But the Beef and Dairy Network podcast was brilliant. So there's another podcast I was involved in. I still am, but we just don't make it anymore. Called Wood and Overcoats, which is a sitcom podcast, a British podcast award winning. just so you know. And all four series of that available for free on podcast apps and at woodenOvercoats.com. So we were starting launching that, and we were quite, naive as to the ways of the world of internet publishing and broadcasting and stuff. And so we had a first series ready to go, and we were trying to work out different ways to promote it. And as it happened, Ben Partridge, creator of the Beef and Dairy Network podcast, was who I knew a bit through Edinburgh and other comedy, contacts, friends, just connected online mainly at that point. He got in touch and said, "What are you doing to promote your thing?" And so we sort of swapped a few notes. We talked about a few different collaborations, kind of put ads in each other's stuff here and there, and retweeted each other just to give each other a leg up at the very beginning. And so that's just how that started. And I had seen Ben's Edinburgh show. I don't know if he's done more than one by himself, maybe just the one, called An Audience with Jeff Goldblum, which was
Oh yeah.
Ben saying he was Jeff Goldblum. And he came out on stage and said, "I'm Jeff Goldblum." And I forget if this was the exact wording, but it was something like, you might be thinking, well, you don't look a lot like Jeff Goldblum or sound like him. But they say the camera puts on 10 pounds. It also makes you look and sound completely like a different person. So he was like, "No, I am Jeff Goldblum." And he created this fictional world where Jeff Goldblum had only been in two films. One was Death Wish 3, which he was a sudden last minute recast because he fit the trousers. And the second one was, I think, Independence Day, if I'm remembering this correctly. And he was also in Jurassic Park, but as himself, because Jurassic Park was a documentary. And so that's the world we're in. And so he's doing this entire show. It's like a career retrospective, looking at old diary pages of his. Like, it was just a comic like Beef and Dairy Network. It was just an excuse for loads of daft jokes. And so he clearly took all the lessons from that and put it into starting this thing. And the way he put it was the comedy of being hyper specific. Like, because if you can be super, super specific about something, like I Look Around You, the very strange and extremely good BBC kind of sketch magazine style format show that parodied 70s educational TV and videos, that can take that language and those references and find super specific jokes that you can only do in that style and with that appearance. So he went, okay, what's funny? Farming, bee cow farming, essentially. How many funny specific jokes can I get out of cow farming? So we just started trying to find every possible joke you can do within that. And there are ones that still survive now. There's only four meats. There's chicken, beef, pork, and lamb. Lamb is very bad. It's like a drug. It's addictive. It sends you this, down the wrong path. They get wayward if you get into lamb. If you're lambing hard, then your life's in crisis. And there is no fifth meat.
Yeah.
But there's sometimes people get in great trouble for suggesting there might be a fifth meat. Things like that. Things that only really you come up with if you're making a show about cow farming. And these running jokes that are established, they build a little world of its own. And it's brilliant. And the great thing about it is, it's because, again, we talked about having no gatekeepers and things, because it's done totally to his own what's the purview, his own schedule, also his own kind of his whim, it can be as nimble as he likes. So suddenly he can dovetail off into doing a whole kind of arc about this horrific tyrannical slaughterhouse owner.
Yeah.
Suddenly he can do a kind of true crime spoof. It can be anything you want it to be. And because he's worked so much in TV and radio comedy, like, as a writer, he's got loads and loads of contacts for people who you can just get in to do an episode. Plus, that as well, the podcast itself is now quite widespread and famous, and he's got connections with the network in America. So because of that, he's had like Nick Offerman and Ted Danson be on it, and for the real ones. It's so crazy. But it's great. But it's all still that kind of that Ben's amazing sense of style and tone and his great production.
Yeah, and I do think that the most memorable ones, in my opinion, is the chimps, because that's just a running gag that it's Mike Bubbins. It's about the Mike Bubbins is just.
Oh God, yeah,
He fits if he's not playing himself, he fits every other role possible. And then I think the other one is obviously the overarching story of Ted Danson, which revolves in Ted Danson then appearing on the thing.
Yeah.
Ted Danson's done some really good comedy. I'm going to say this. slightly bad comedy. Sorry, Mr. Mayor was terrible.
Oh,
Um,
well, I've never seen it, so sure, let's say it is.
yeah.
He's in Cheers, though. You can't
Can't
knock
beat
him.
that. Can't beat
That's
that.
you set up for life if you're in Cheers.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, or if you're up at 2 in the morning, you can watch Cheers or Frasier or Raymond, but not Kings and Queens, which is a spin-off from Raymond. You get away.
I didn't even know it was a spin-off of Everyone Loves Raymond, is it?
It is because it's what's his face? Who's
Paul
more?
Blart Mall Cop, he's
Yeah,
in both, isn't he?
it's his character out of Raymond.
Is it? I didn't even know that. I'm not,
Oh,
I never saw Everyone Loves Raymond, so I'm
oh,
not up on this stuff.
I know too much. Yeah, yeah,
Just enough.
just enough by accident. But but he was on Benjamin Partridge, who
Mm,
I just adore.
you're brilliant.
He was on Richard Herring's podcast, and
Yeah, I heard that one.
he's mentioned a really interesting thing that we're going to get onto in a minute because
Mm,
it's really relevant. He mentioned that there's not enough podcasts that are time and effort put into them due to the fact that
mm.
we've not just me sat there. I haven't got a demonstration microphone. It's around the corner. It you stood there with the microphone going, yeah, cheese. It was very nice that cheese we had and whatever, and having a discussion, which is the main, but which isn't a bad genre podcast. I do a lot. I do most of them. I do 20 of them it seems, and well, not really, but I think that it's interesting because he said that, and that made me think, wow, that is true. There's
Mm.
not enough podcasts that are scripted, that are engineered, and I think that when he did a live stream on Twitch where he tried to make a cover of "Saviour's Day" by Cliff Richard, and he watched this morning clip of Cliff Richard miming along to it so that he could do his own like musical arrangement of the song. And I told him that I have my own sketch show podcast that that is rather weird and which it really is weird because the last episode had me pretending to be a crow and and then me pretending to be a boat that only speaks in Shakespearean words, but the only word I know in Shakespeare is thy. So I just kept saying
Die, yeah.
thy after every sentence. And I think that it's more interesting. And then Alan Partridge's podcast, which I then have my own Albert Farpot podcast, that's my own comedy character, and obviously Tom Burgess has his, and there's many.
Yeah,
I think
absolutely.
there's a wide spectrum of them, and where did the idea for your equivalent of the scripted of the actual effort put in podcast?
The effort put in
Like,
podcast. It's such a shame to have to call it that, but that kind of is what it is, right? But I think the opposite end of that. Well, firstly, I think let's define our terms, because there's stuff like what I do and what Ben Partridge does, and things like Wooden Overcoats, which is a fully produced. I mean, that's like a professional standard production sitcom by our amazing producers Andy Goddard and John Wakefield. Need to shout them out. But yeah, I think that's the one end. And then at the other end, there's the sort of podcast where they release it like daily.
yeah,
And it'll usually be branded or it'll be some sort of Instagram influencer or a celebrity.
or John
And
Wick.
all they're doing is going, so hey, we're going to cut it up. What are you talking about today? Okay, what are you doing, Brad? Oh, me, Brad? Oh, I'm just doing it. Just like that. And it's just gibberish. There's nothing to it. But it's just that parasocial thing where it's like company. And that's down that end where it's just like, how's your skincare routine today, Brad? Yeah, pretty good. I'm trying a new exfoliating brush. And that's, not to do down anyone who makes these shows that just are blah, blah, blah. But
Yeah,
there's a lot in the middle where you go, that's just chatting, or that's just talking on a theme, or covering a TV genre, a program, whatever. And those I think are all totally valid because I think unless you are just doing that, just like content, I'll try not to swear, content, like as much as possible, churn it out. If you're not doing that, something like Three Bean Salad is just chatting. I mean, there's some great segments with like sound production
oh yeah,
and jingles,
amazing.
wonderful stuff, and so much effort goes into that stuff.
Yeah,
But more to the point, the three of them are brilliant comic minds, and
yeah,
they are naturally, by improvising and chatting, building up this little world of its own, and these references, and the constant threat of spurbs, the fact that all humans are eventually going to evolve into crabs, these things that they stick to and they remember them because they've got great improvisational minds. So, and I'm a big fan of the Doughboys, which is an American podcast where they review fast food and chain restaurants.
yeah,
Not really because I care about that especially, but because the central hosts, Nick Weiger and Mike Mitchell, they're dynamic with each other, and the way that plays off with their guests is just so funny.
yeah.
And I find that's the nearest I get to that kind of totally, vomiting content sort of type of podcast. But I think it elevates it into something else because it's a kind of improvisational comedy. It's a kind of comedy jam. It's it's like radio back in the day. But anyway, so that's kind of the landscape as it is. And I remember listening to that exact Richard Herring episode you're talking about,
Yeah.
and delighted Ben got to be on it as well, and you could tell he was excited.
And he was
But
shoes off.
the what? Sorry.
She was allowed to take his shoes off because Charlotte, I can't think of her last name, but she was on it an hour before and she took her shoes off across the legs.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, yeah. That's yes. That came back as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, and yes. So him and his shoes, but him talking about that, you do think about it a lot. I got a great compliment actually on the latest episode, the show that you're referring to, Crowley Time, my own sort of self-produced independent sketchy thing.
Yeah.
From my old sketch buddy, Toby Wilson, animation writer Toby Wilson. He said that the ending of that, which, spoilers, involved the main character swelling up into a giant man that did battle with a robot dolphin. Like again, it's free. It's free that. You just need the sound effects. It's free. You don't have to pay for any of that. You don't have to see it ever.
You don't even
Brilliant.
need a dolphin.
That's it, exactly. You don't even need a dolphin, not at all. That was a stock dolphin. I don't mind telling you. I didn't find a dolphin and record it or enlarge it even. But he said for the first time since we were doing those, play and record and the early Sad Faces radio show, I realized that the potential of audio is that you can do absolutely anything. And I thought that's so nice of you to say that because I had the same experience of going. I've worked long enough and hard enough with audio editing and sound effects and music and editing voices and things that I feel like I can kind of produce whatever I want now at this stage. I also had a lot of help from my buddy Odin Hilmarsson, who's a music and audio genius. He's taken me through a few tricks you can do with digital audio editing. But anyway, but it's true that sense that you have no budget, you've got no limitation. So to take it back to what Ben was saying, the fact that most people just do talk, like just about nothing, or with very little ambition, it is surprising. Just because it's there, you can have it. I mean, I have no issue with being one of a very small pool of people, because in the smaller the pool, then the more likely you are to be one of the best people in that pool. But I'm fine with that. But again, I do hope that people in this landscape where there's not much risk going on in the conventional corridors of power, I hope that more people are interested in. I know most people are sort of doing it via TikTok and YouTube more than in audio, but it would be nice if a few more kind of bold, brave comedy voices learnt those self-sufficient editing skills and recording skills and took it out there and made their own mad little world. Because that's basically what I've done.
Yeah.
But none of this is the answer to the question you actually asked me, which is how does that relate to this? And doing Wooden Overcoats and being involved in it and seeing Beef and Dairy get made, those were the biggest influences in me wanting to do my own sketch thing like that, because as we've talked about, I realized I already have a bit of a specialism in doing lots of different voices through years of doing radio comedy type stuff, so that's kind of my terrain. So if I do that and I just put the work in editing it, I don't have to bother another actor. I have done now subsequently quite a lot, but I don't have to.
Yeah.
I can do it in my own time, to my own deadline, to my own schedule, to my own taste, everything. And I'm a totally self-sufficient radio production engine, essentially. And that's I'm sure as you've discovered, that's a very powerful thing to feel.
It is, and I think that one of the things that I just wanted to come in, the only daily podcast that we accept is Chatterbox, because 1 minute you could be in a car driving near one of Joe Wilkinson's in-laws, or have one of the main stars of Big Boys jumping into a pool doing a lap of the pool. And it's the only, and then you have Eyes on Legs, who the boy that does all the music, also then made the theme tune for Ben Rufus Green's online Sunday morning program that he does on Twitch called Washing Up Club, where he washes up. He saves all his washing in the week, and he washes up.
Does it all in something? Oh my God! Imagine that.
And he talks to people. So Dan Fern, who's in Things We Should Have Done.
Yeah. Oh, he's great. He's the young guy, the young second lead. Yeah, he's brilliant.
So he keeps on talking about how he's got cats and whatnot, and they have conversations about he's better than Ben because Ben's not got as many set auditions than Dan's got this week, and they have this like rival. Whilst he tried to scoop out the cat tin and stop his cat from jumping off the roof, but I think that, and then with having the podcast, you have to think about what the story is. For me, doing my Albert Thorpe podcast is the first time I've had a character where I've remembered what the voice is. So
Right, yeah.
I had an issue for a long time, which is why I had to start pre-recording stuff. Was when I did college radio for briefly, I
Mm.
couldn't remember the voice. So whilst I'm doing the voice, and I move on to another character because they're in the room, I then can't remember what the other voice was because I couldn't. I had an issue where I
It
couldn't.
can be hard, like for anyone. I mean, even in voices you've done a lot, I find myself going back and it
Yeah,
was because probably the second most frequently appearing character in the show is Savile the postmaster, who's a sort of old Cockney gentleman, and even that then wasn't good enough. What I just did then as a sample, because when I'm stood up in the booth, I sort of have to slightly hunch my shoulders and shake to do the voice, probably like. Oh, sir, a few letters come in the door, like that. That's it. But
yeah,
even that, doing it like that, it's different to that, and it's also different to that. And like you worry, even within what is clearly the same voice, you can slide up and down the register, you can lose details.
yeah,
So, I think with Savile, I've just about cracked it where I can do it serviceably without having to check it. But
yeah,
often, if I have to bring a character back, I go, right, what does that, what do they sound like,
yeah.
and how do I keep them distinct from them? And it's really tough.
And I had to then do pre-recording. So then originally they were in my college station was technically not really well known, so not many people did anything on it. And then it
Yeah.
stopped broadcasting after the year after I did it.
Oh, right.
And it was music based, so every few minutes was another element of a sitcom where the characters were getting ready for the show, and
Mm.
I had different segments and they created islands, and none of it had ever been done on the college radio before. So I was
Oh, right.
trying
Oh,
to do
wow.
that. I was going to do a panel show, but then that didn't come out. But I wrote all the questions and made all the material, but it never happened due
Oh,
to
shame.
they were anyway. And so I had to then create characters where they couldn't turn up. So a new character would be in the room, but they couldn't. And I had to get up and slam doors and whatnot. But they couldn't turn up because they were either stuck in traffic, stuck in a restaurant's toilet. It was called Lost Friends, and so I had to patch it together and to
Oh,
make
great
it
title.
separately. Then I had to patch it together for
Yeah.
YouTube, and so I have like characters where they were supposed to be at my show, and they have to send their friend. They have to ring up their friend and get them to go because they're trapped in the freezer aisle of a supermarket, or they're trapped somewhere, so that they can't turn up. So all I have to do is come up with a brand new voice, with a brand new character immediately on the spot,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and so that it saves time because I've already pre-written, pre-recorded a whole set of incidents. The reason why the main characters that have been there for weeks just
Yeah.
can't turn up for the next 4 weeks. And I think that, and it just makes it more incredible because even though some people say that having too much freedom is a bad thing, I
Hmm.
think that sometimes if she's starting out and what I try and do is I try to break the mold. I look what they're doing
Hmm.
on the radio station. I try to do something different. I'm like if alternative comedy was actually just me coming up with really weird nonsense and that no one could care less about. And I just
That
do,
is alternative comedy.
yeah,
It's not all of it, but that is alternative comedy. That's what
yeah.
that is.
And I
But
think
it's
that
yeah, and what you're describing, I think, as well, though, in terms of having, either a limitation in terms of time or worrying you've forgotten a voice or having to improvise and go, actually, I'm going to change who this is speaking. That is sort of being nimble and also working within limitations and letting those limitations inspire you,
yeah.
which is I think a big part of it about having that resourcefulness of making this sort of thing work and keeping it going and staying interested in it as well.
And so I managed to get my comedy character Albert Falport to exist with the same voice. So I made two series of a sitcom. I put a song on Bandcamp that was supposed to be terrible because he was supposed to be really wrong.
Yeah,
I couldn't work out to get it onto Spotify, but Bandcamp was the next bit. And then I got him,
someday, yeah.
and then I got him to appear as a Twilight Zone type narrator in my own Doctor Who
Oh,
fan series.
oh,
So
lovely.
and then I make reference that he now works for the BBC again, but really he works for my other YouTube channel. But I think that having characters that you then remember, and so then my character evolves due to all the inspiration, and I think that that's what works with having sketch shows and having memorable voices. It makes it easy, but if you don't do it for a while, it's right. You do forget, and you have to listen back, and then you have to remember, and then you have to remember what you said because then you can't remember if you're going to contradict yourself. And do you reckon that that's
Yeah.
why these podcasts aren't widely in the world because it is time consuming, not just recording, editing, and sending it out, but it's also remembering was if you're doing if you're doing a certain bit where it's each thing has to be in chronological order of existence, like canon. Do you reckon that that's a lot harder and that's why it doesn't exist as much?
I think it's a bunch of things. I think firstly, it simply is that the more popular medium, both I think in terms of just what people have naturally connected to, but also in terms of the growth potential and, getting $1 million endorsements from protein powder, are Instagram videos and things like that. I mean, if I was trying to be more cynical about this, I'd maybe pick one character that I could do the same every time,
Yeah,
that was just one camera angle of my house that I could film over and over and over again and just do the same character time again, not even really change the joke and just keep releasing a new video every day. And over time, then it's like, oh great, you're an Instagram partner because you've got millions of views. And if that's what I wanted to do, that my life would probably be a lot easier, and it'd be easier to look like a success. But as it is, I think people like me and Ben, I think we do love radio comedy,
yeah,
and I
brilliant.
think that's a sort of bug that you I think what's interesting about podcasting as well is seeing people that didn't grow up with radio comedy, particularly British radio comedy, suddenly connect to it
Yeah,
and go, "Oh, hang on, so it's like radio but film." And you go, "Yeah, exactly. Like it's like the Goon Show. That's like Old Harry's Game. It's like the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. All the stuff that I listened to as a kid that inspired me and made me want to do this."
yeah.
And there's a particular mood and there's a particular set of freedoms. I mean, the budget concerns we already talked about, but also just the fact I remember listening to and this was later in my sort of teen years, but I listened to the Mighty Boosh's radio show.
Oh, brilliant.
It's amazing, isn't it? And one thing I love about it is it's got the capacity to sometimes be a bit creepy,
Yeah,
and there are moments where, and the Goon Show's the same. There's an episode of the Goon Show which is it the Yeti or whatever, but it's I think it is a spoof of Nigel Neal's The Abominable Snowman, or something. Or there's, I can't remember. But they did a few
mm,
proper scary psychedelic journeys in the
yeah,
Goon Show, where Neddy Seagoon's going like, "I'll just go through this door," and he goes through and he says like, "Oh, there's nothing here, just a blank white space," and you hear a train sound effect go through, and he says, "Well, that was the 11:30 to Doncaster, and it's late," and it's Lewis Carroll, surrealism, and if you're only, if as I was, you're in bed listening to this on your Sony Walkman CD player, and you're on your own, and it can be quite disturbing.
yeah,
And I really love the fact that the Mighty Boosh radio show, there was no laugh track on it either. It was all studio recorded,
yeah,
and that was probably, now that I think about it, that was another big influence on Crowley Time, because there are moments where they've ended up in one of their Mighty Boosh style surreal encounters, but you can't see who the person is,
yeah,
so you just hear sort of jungle noise in the background, like quiet nighttime, like crickets chirping, and then you got Howard Moon there going, "Oh, hello," and then someone else going, "Hello." And that's it. And there's silence. And then he goes like, are you all right? Said, "Yeah, fine, thanks." And you're like, "Who the hell is this?" And there's that mood, that kind of being somehow immersive is such a buzzword for audio stuff, but it's true. Like you feel sort of the suspense that you can build up somehow, and the reality of it is so inviting. I love it.
yeah. And the one thing I do want to mention, due to the
Yeah.
fact that I saw a review of it that didn't really sit with what I heard, but I
Mm.
would highly recommend the Radio 4 2 p.m. Sitcom. I think it's a sitcom starring Stephen Mangan, and he does most of the voices. It's
Hmm.
called The Island, where it's what happens if
Oh,
celebrities, but we're on desert island discs. We're with
yeah, yeah.
on a desert island, and it was I think it was Delia Smith was really annoyed with Stephen because he had another coffee machine because there's no plugs, and he realized, oh, there's no plugs. And so Delia, and then they're also really annoyed because then Tony Robbins is then annoyed because people are eating all the fruits. There's not many,
Right.
and so he's there curled up crying because there's not enough fruit
Ah.
going about. And it's brilliant because you feel like you're listening to an audiobook, but you're really just listening to Stephen Mangan realizing what happens if Desert Island Discs was a real island, and you
Yeah,
with
yeah,
all
yeah. I did hear about this. I had no idea. So it's just it's a monologue basically. It's Stephen
it's a
Mangan.
monologue, and he would then play Delia Smith going, "Why have you brought all this?"
Yeah,
And then
distressingly similar to what I do. Yeah.
it, it starts off. It starts off with them on the island, and the last memory they have is being on Desert Island Discs. And when we,
Right. So they've sort of been gassed and then dropped off on the island
yeah,
after they've said,
yeah,
"Well, I told you what I wanted to take with me, so now,"
uh,
and
uh,
they get taken off and dumped.
and
Which is a
so
good idea.
yeah, it's brilliant, and I think it shouldn't be criticised. It should be more loved, and hopefully that once it's finished and people then technically forget about it, it goes on to Audible because at one point it will go on
Yeah.
and it'll resurge and the audience will fall in love with it because Audible makes you fall in love with radio comedy all over again. If you loved it
Mm.
before, you love it again, and
Well, that's
so
one thing about Sounds that I love, the fact that every episode of the Goon Show that still exists,
yeah,
you can listen to on there.
yeah.
Some of them are lost, which is one of the greatest humanitarian tragedies in human history, as far as I'm concerned. But also, same with Hancock. I think some of Hancock's missing as well, isn't it? And yeah, because they did the missing Hancocks and re-recorded them. But the fact that you can get all of Hancock's half hour and things like Round the Horn, which I'm less familiar with, but like I could any time.
Yeah,
This is just how I mean, to be honest, I think a lot of TV should be like this as well. If you've got Channel 4, the BBC,
yeah.
anything they've made, you should be able to go back and rediscover all of it if you
Oh,
want to.
yeah,
But the fact that we've got all of that lovely, brilliant, just astonishingly clever and funny radio comedy and stupid. The
yeah,
Goon Show is like the stupidest thing,
yeah.
and it's
The,
so wonderful. It's a joy unlike many other things in life.
yeah,
But
the,
yeah, it's all there. You can have it.
there is an archive for TV. It's just you have to either be a university student or
Mm,
depend on who you ask, a college student, depending on which college you're at. It's
yeah.
got lots of broadcasts, and
Mm-hmm.
and I can watch an episode of EastEnders from 1985,
Mm.
like as one of the reruns. I can watch whatever if you. But it does radio as well, so
So
if,
it's out there. There's a similar thing called BBC, what used to be called BBC Redux, which is
yeah,
only for in-house BBC staff.
yeah.
And I'm not going to name when this was or who the person was, but there was a show I wanted to watch, which was written by Andrew Marshall,
Oh,
who the creator of 2.4 Children
yeah, yeah.
and
Very nice,
co-writer of
nice
David
man.
Renwick.
He's a nice
Yeah.
man. Yeah.
Oh, have you met him?
Well, I've just spoke to him. He recorded some audio for a not very good. Well, it's a few issues, but a radio documentary I was doing about 2.4 children, and
Ah, great.
I played an audio recording of the Swedish version. It's really you have to watch it to understand what's going on because if you don't know Swedish, you're screwed.
Yeah, buggered
He
around.
answered my
Yeah.
question by recording, so he kept cropping up because I also interviewed Julia Hills, so I knew Julia Hills
Oh, brilliant.
2.4 children. So it
Oh,
went
she's so
from
great.
him talking, her talking, but her interview was like 2 years old, so I reused content because I reused the material, and so it was
Oh,
like
sorry, content. Yes. Ah,
uh,
swearing. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. Quite. No, no, indeed. No, but he's brilliant. That's so exciting. I would love to hear that into that documentary. But
it's
Deal with Children is amazing. Love it. Uh, and Andrew Marshall, he created a show called Strange
oh yeah,
with Richard Coyle. Is that his name from Coupling?
yes,
Uh,
yeah,
yeah, and it was a this is I was working on a pilot for a similar premise, very different but vaguely similar show about supernatural investigation and stuff. And so I watched it. I was like, what shows are there that have done this? And I watched a few of them, including one called Apparitions, starring what's his name, The Professionals. No, it's gone. Oh, never mind. Anyway, the which what?
Dennis Waterman.
No, no, hang on. I'm going to find this out. I'm annoyed now. I'm annoyed at myself. Famous vegan. What's his name? Apparitions. Do.
A lot of people
2008 TV series starring, drumroll, Martin Shaw is his name. Martin Shaw.
not the American.
Anyway, so there was that one, and there was this other one called Strange, which was Richard Coyle playing a sort of priest with a crisis of faith who investigated demon possession stories. It's good fun. However, you can't get it anywhere, and I tried to find it anywhere online, anywhere legitimate that you could get it from a streaming service. There was nothing. In the
Yeah,
end, I had to ask a friend who was at the time working at the BBC to download it for me and send it over because there was no other way to get it. Because I was like, I literally can't watch this. This is unbelievable. Anyway, I'd recommend it if you've got a friend that works at the BBC. Strange with Richard Coyle. Good fun.
we recommend you get a friend at the BBC.
Always a good idea.
Yeah,
Always a good
always.
idea.
Or if you really want to be cheeky, get a friend that works at ITV. It'd be really cheeky. Um,
Well, yeah, very, very cheeky.
yeah, very cheeky. And so there we have it. That is another excellente an amazing interviewee. That is a short way of saying I ditched the dictionary and I've just moved on to saying words because I
Mm.
feel like it. And thank you for letting me interview you.
Oh, absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me.
And for people that are watching right now, could you let them know where people can find you without giving away your home address?
Oh, it's fine. Don't come around here, no. But online, you can find me at a Tom Crowley or Atom Crowley, if you prefer. On basically all social media, I've ditched the Elon Musk machine, but I'm on Blue Sky, I'm on Instagram, I'm on, which is hypocritical, of course, because Meta's evil as well. But anyway, I'm on Blue Sky, Instagram, Facebook, places like that. You can find me. But the thing I'd mainly implore everybody watching this to do, if you do like sketchy comedy, weird high concept comedy, any sort of comedy, really, then please listen to Crowley Time, my sketch and character comedy show, which you can find on any podcast app or at crowleytime.com.
Yeah, there we have it. And there'll be more interviews by me because once you start, you can't stop. Uh, it was trying to not get mixed with once you. No, no, I can't even think of what the original phrase is now. See, I've got
Once
myself.
you pop, you can't stop interviewing.
Yes, yeah, and so what a wonderful world. And so for anyone that's wondering here on the third channel, the weird side, yes, it's 3 out of 22. I'm trying to avoid making the 23rd, but it's very hard. But and so there'll be more interviews, and there will be a break of interviews probably so that I can upload other things. Because if you look at the last few videos, it's 4 interviews. I mean, I'm amazed at myself. I'm a genius. I know. Pat myself in the back. And so, thank you guys for watching. And remember, no, I